Hello, special greetings for everyone. I am Susana Rodriguez, psychologist at INSER. Welcome to Voices of Hope, Infertility as a Path of Learning. Today we have the guest Maru Pesuggi. Maru is from Argentina. Hi Maru, how are you doing? How are you, Susana? I'm very happy to be here. Thank you very much. Let me tell you that Maru has a degree in business administration and communication. Since 2013, she's been writing from her experience topics related to infertility, and in 2017 she published her first book called Que me parto un milagro. Since then, she has been active in social media, sharing information associated with infertility, and she supports a tribe, as she calls, that faces infertility process. She's gonna talk. Her talk is called The Quest for Pregnancy, a Path of Learning. Maru, how are you feeling? I'm very happy to participate in these spaces, in these necessary spaces for our patients. Sometimes we limit ourselves to treatments, and there are so many things that influence the process, and to have a support group from other people can be very enlightening for the patients, and I'm very thankful. I thank also this global situation to be closer through the virtual world. The floor is yours, Maru. Hello, how are you? I've been thinking a lot about this talk organized by INSER. The first thing I thought was, in all these people who are on the other side of the screen listening, I ask myself about their stories. If maybe they have similar diagnoses, because they can be similar, but stories are so different and complex as people and as person. The first thing that came into my mind is when I started to go through this journey. I always thought that looking for a child was against everything that I learned during my teenage years. There was contraception methods, and not only to avoid pregnancy, but to avoid ETS. And I always had the concept of family in my mind. And with time, I met my husband. He's a character, but he's made from flesh and bone. Then we started to become a family, and when we made the decision, it was a consented decision that came from love. I always thought there was only a matter of leaving contraceptives behind and that I was going to get pregnant. And I'm going to confess that I was always very anxious. And when I missed my pregnancy, the anxiety was even bigger. Luckily, quote unquote, this anxiety led me to visit a doctor, and then we had these diagnoses. And I remember something that I usually talk about, that in between this search and the diagnosis, my life was being governed by my ovaries, by my cycles, by my period, and everything started to revolve around it. I started to project my life in cycles, in menstrual cycles, in attempts, in treatments, in changes in protocols, in researching what other areas of medicine could help me accomplish this dream as a couple. During this journey, there were many things that I didn't realize. that my life was governed by this desire changed my focus on many things that was happening around me. The first chapter of my book, it's a call to action to this, on how desire can be in every single aspect of our lives. And it's not easy. The moment you desire so much a child, the focus of attention is there, and it's very hard to look everything else around us. One of the first things that I began to notice is that I became a person with feelings that I didn't recognize. A friend of mine that was pregnant, I was being jealous, and the only thing that I could see was bellies. What was happening to me? In the middle of this, I became isolated. I was afraid to be with my friends from college or from high school, because at some point there are going to be news and I'm not going to be able to handle. So I began to rediscover myself, and it wasn't easy. During a lot of time, I lived this process in silence, feeling guilty, feeling pity because what was happening to me. I was lucky to being able to write. I had to share it with someone. It wasn't very encouraging because it's really hard to tell this story of having issues, having trouble getting pregnant. I was gonna feel judged, and I was gonna get comments like, why don't you relax? Why don't you adopt a pet? Things that deep down, they wanna help, but with the wrong words. In the moment I started writing, it was liberating for me. I didn't do it in the beginning with my real name. It's still taboo in fertility, so I used a pseudonym. And then I started finding a lot of people who felt the same way, who couldn't find the words, and we started connecting, and that connection created a community that, as Susana said, is Fertilidad en Tribu. This community that you feel that you belong, you don't feel isolated anymore, you don't feel misunderstood, everyone is going through the same, more or less. It led me to realize that I should learn through that mirror. This learning process took me a while. It's been almost 10 years that I've been on this track. And I chose. And here, I believe I should highlight this. I chose to learn that the objective is a child, but during this path, we're going to learn a lot. First, to be compassionate with us. We didn't choose this. Come on, who's going to choose to have trouble getting pregnant? It's not our fault. I also learned that any choice that I make is not right or wrong. It's right when I make the decision based on information and in the recognition that I know what I'm doing. There are paths that you can choose. No one can judge you. Everyone is going to talk, but no one can judge you except you. I learned that communication is essential. When you have a partner, you're going to notice that your partner is not going to live it in the same way, but it doesn't mean they're not living it with the same intensity. It's just different. Communication is very, very important. I learned that even it's a little bit frustrating, each treatment increases the chance of achieving it, but it's not a guarantee. No one can give us a guarantee. If someone gives a guarantee, we have to get out of that place, because biology, even if sometimes seems difficult to understand, human beings are the ones with the worst fertility rate. Imagine the amount of sperm that a man can ejaculate, and with the amount of eggs of a woman. And even without having specific issues with fertility, it can fail. There are no guarantees in biology. Understanding this and accepting it, and facing every opportunity with courage, because you need courage to dream, this helped control what was happening with the results. Because many years passed before I saw a beta positive, but I chose to learn from them. I learned that smiling all the time didn't help, that it was okay to be unwell. There's a saying that goes like, in order to go out of the pit, you have to reach the bottom. And we leave grief. The first one is the fact that we're not able to get pregnant naturally, and that we need help from science and medicine. And then I understood that those negatives came to write a story. I wrote my story. You are writing your own story. And during that, something is happening, and you're writing your path towards your children. It was very hard. My first high complexity treatment that was negative, I really thought that when a lab and when a biology could control the joining of these gametes, the problem was solved. And when I knew that there were embryos, they were all my children already, and one of them in my womb, I had a lot of hope, but it didn't work. And that day I felt like I broke. I can't find any other words for this, but I broke. And I gave myself time, and there I understood that giving yourself time is necessary. Sometimes you get into a turmoil in order to get pregnant. You're going to do one treatment after the other, and that's exhausting mentally and physically. But processing what's happening makes us face those treatments with more energy. We cannot meet our children being exhausted. We have to get there with a dose of expectations. I came to the treatments thinking that I was going to get pregnant, and that expectation, I started to dose it. And I thought that was necessary to do it with energy, with hope. And I learned that foreign experience was it was very nourishing for my own experience. I spent a lot of time comparing myself to other people, to other doctors, but we are all different in spite of having the same diagnosis. Diagnosis is just a name, but there's a story. And it took time for me to learn. It took me some time to learn that things don't go as you expect them to go. But how many things actually go like you expect? And if you're on the other side listening to this talk, it's because you are betting with what you have to bet. Not only giving your body to medicine to get help, but it's also to nourish your spirit in a quest that is sometimes really hard. I don't like to romanticize infertility. It's horrible. This process is really tough. However, resilience, this word that is in fashion that I really love, it's to get something with a lot of strength. And that's key. This is the key. without a doubt. I also learned, and I would like to talk about this, in this quest, in this search for the proper treatment, we looked constantly for answers. Why doesn't it work? What am I doing wrong? What else do I need to do? Because you do everything. But sometimes it's good to ask more questions. What's my limit? Could be one of those. Am I prepared now? What else do I need? Do I need another consultation? What's going on with me? Do I need to get stronger with my bonds in relationships? Do I need more company? Because you can feel lonely, and that can be scary. It can be scary to feel judged too. Where are all these questions? Let me tell you something that happened to me that is related to this. It never happened that I got canceled a treatment for a low response. I have polycystic ovarian syndrome. I have a good reservoir, but the quality is not so good. I had never experienced a canceled treatment because of a low response. Imagine all the possibilities, and that was not among one of those that I could have imagined. So I understood that there are so many things that we cannot control, so many, and trying to control them starts to be a burden emotionally and physically. I don't believe in magic pills. I also go away from magic pills. If they're actually worked, everyone should be using them. And at that point, sometimes it helps. Magic pills can create false expectations, and we can lose energy in that. Asking yourself questions that I was saying, like getting a treatment canceled for a low response, that was the first time that I said, I need to stop. I need time for myself. Because that really caught me off guard. It wasn't a negative. There were embryos there. I just got it canceled. I understood that I needed to listen to myself. And I took some time. You know what happened after that? When I came back with all the energy, and wonderful things started to happen. But there were not magic pills. It was a continuous communication with myself. I learned that there are many professionals, not only doctors, but many other people from healthcare, like psychologists and others, who understand more than anyone what's going on through their knowledge from the academy. And they can guide us through processes that we don't understand. And it helps us to have a little bit of control. We can continue with this path of learning, and I come back to the fact that it's a decision that we make. We need to choose to do something with what it's happening to us. We always look empathy outside, but we can start to be more empathic with ourselves and with others. I was lucky to transform all this into a book that helps other people. And it's very important, and I say it again, not to compare with others, it's important to value other people's experiences. And sometimes you just have to ignore the comments because they're gonna come. Before finishing, I want to tell you an anecdote. I think I have listened to all recommendations that are given to the patients. For example, I read a magazine that if you have a certain position, you can increase the rate of success. And I chose to laugh because for a long time, it made me feel really angry. You're talking about a magazine. I've been with the doctor for 4 years. So I started to laugh with irony. That was my tool, my channel, my catalyst. Humor saves. It saved me. And I was able to apply this into other aspects of my life. I was saying that these comments come, and after many years, I could become a mom. In this dream that came true, and it gives me chills. And I thought that everything was going to end there. And I was at a children's party, at a children's birthday with many moms and children. They were talking about second childs, pregnant women and women that wanted to get pregnant again. And since I carry the flag of the quest for this and in this topic of infertility, I took the time to tell the story that this exists. I said, look, in order to have my daughter, I went through a lot of processes because I had a lot of infertility issues. And they all said the second one arrives if you relax yourself. So being in a good mood can help a lot. So this is what I wanted to tell you, and I hope it's helpful. Thank you, Maru, from the bottom of our heart. I'm sure it's going to reach a lot of people. Maru, I'd like to ask some questions. You said something that is very important. It's not an easy path. A good possibility is to look into that mirror and start to make choices, conscious choices, not only focusing on the final objective, being a mother, but also what other choices can I make to learn and to grow. And you used a word, having expectations, like those expectations. It's a repetitive question because we have these expectations in the magical cloud. Then you land them and then you feel in the ground. And a common question is, should I be excited? Should I talk to my belly? Should I talk to my embryos? So what do you mean with those expectations? And how could you, with your own experience, keep your hopes in spite of the failures? I think that hope, you cannot detach from it. You're always going to have hope and dreams. If they don't exist, then we have to ask ourselves, what are we doing? So having hopes and dreams, it's like an engine. So having those expectations and understanding that the treatments increase our rate of success, but they don't guarantee the success. If you are going to talk to your belly, to pamper yourself, you have to do whatever you feel, but knowing this and understanding. There comes a point where we cannot do anything else. Not even the doctors, not even the biologists. It's just life and the gametes. And we cannot interfere positively or negatively. Understanding this lifted a lot of weight from my shoulders. So being in a treatment, knowing that I'm doing everything I can, everything possible, knowing that there's a chance that it might or might not work, it made me rationalize the process and being there with love and hope, but with lower expectations. Well, no, not actually lower them, just have them in the proper dose. I could notice too that having this strategy in the treatments, whenever some of them didn't work, it was easier for me to recover. I think that's key. And it's really hard for me to do. But it's part of the process. And it's part of the understanding of the process. Yes, I agree, Maru. One more thing that you said is that it was very important for you to write. It was a tool, like a catalyst to channel what you were feeling. And you didn't do it with your own name because infertility can be a taboo. You realized that there were many people who identified with you, and from there, the creation of the tribe came. Talk to us about the importance of living the process with others. Well, first, because you normalize feelings and emotions. We were talking about the envy of the pregnant women, or being outside and only seeing bellies, because sometimes you feel bad for being jealous of someone, and these can bring a lot of guilt. But when you start to notice that these emotions are also part of someone else's experience in a woman in a different city, you start to feel less of a weirdo. You're not at all alone. And it doesn't minimize the pain. And it might not even make the path easier, but somehow it makes it softer. And being able to have the meetings with people going through the same, you start to be an accomplice, what we call the tribe. And then from really hard situations, you can build human bonds. I have found friends in my adulthood. You have friends from teenage years or college, but in my adulthood, I have made friends. When you think that it's not possible to create a strong bond, and we have been joined by this. Not feeling alone is key. Women are the ones who make the tribes more than men, and I encourage them to make their own tribes. What happens with men? You talk about your partner. How was it in your own story? Well, first, it was a surprise. The first diagnosis was from him. So sometimes you're asked, who has the problem? And actually the process is joined, it's both. So I don't understand much about medicine, but I do understand numbers. And when I started to see the proportions, something was not clicking. So we have a problem. How is he gonna take it? We haven't thought about this. We never even considered that the problem might be on his side. And then we found a very good spermogram, but with a bad morphology, less than 1%. So this affected this patriarchy vision of the macho. how he was going to take it. And I was surprised that he took it really well. He said, let's solve it. With time, I started to notice we lived this in a different way. It was completely different for both. I was very passionate, I was crying, and he was more rational, more methodical. Sometimes I ask myself, does he want it like I do? And we did want it in the same intensity, but we just lived it in a different way. And communication was very important. With time, he was with me in every consultation, and then at some point, I didn't even need him to be in every appointment, in every test. It was liberating in a way, because it can take a lot of time, and we both work. So sometimes it's complicated to be outside, leave our jobs. So we started to split. And I recommend one of the things that we did. The treatment is always on the women. We get the injections. How am I gonna involve him in all this ritual? I prepared the hormones and he injected them. In that way, I invited him to the process. He was being an observer. And at some point, he told me something very exciting. I had to inject with a very painful medicine. And I always closed my eyes because it was very painful. And at some point, he was looking at me. I would give anything to be the one who's getting the shot. Yeah, the importance of empathy at that moment. Yes. In our case, and for most cases, we always say that they live it. They don't know if they want it as much as we do, but they're also going through this quest. And they might experience the same feelings, but they show them in a different way. And communication is key for this. And pay attention to these details, because it's easy to get angry because of frustration, and then you get upset. But then you see these details. They have to wait more. Maru, besides writing, what other tools did you use to get emotions out or to regulate your emotions? You talked about pairs as the time to recharge energy. What other resources, psychological resources or emotional, did you use? Well, writing was key. Writing honestly was very important. So there are many things that I didn't publish because I was ashamed. But having the channel, even if it was private, was very important. I could come back to those things that I wrote and recognize changes. I also needed the help of a psychologist to process what was happening. And I went to my psychologist, to the one that I always go when I was going through a crisis, and it was very good. But today, I would recommend a specific psychologist. Maybe you're explaining the whole process of the embryo, and then half of your session goes into explaining the formation of an embryo. So I recommend that it's a specialized psychologist. One of the things that might sound repetitive, but having a tribe, a group of, like a pair group, lifts a lot away from your partner. I always tell an anecdote. When we were looking in the beginning, I was looking for my fertile days, and I explained to my husband that the fertile days we get a discharge like an egg yolk, and we were having dinner. I was explaining with my fingers, and he looked at me and said, can we talk about this in another time, please? And then I realized that I needed to channel that somewhere else because they get affected. You're very invested. And then what was very helpful, I didn't do complementary therapies. I don't believe in that. I know they help, like Eastern medicine. I never did it, but free your partner was also very helpful to fill my bag with useful things. Forums were very helpful, but it can be a double-bladed sword. Maybe not read so many stories because it might not be helpful. You don't have to carry the anguish of others. What do you recommend to read? Start to read authors from experienced people with these topics. Today, there are many doctors who are on social media, and that also helps to understand medical information and assess the information we consume. For example, all the medical statements should have support, evidence. So maybe Mabel comes and tells you that mint leaves increases fertility. Please ask Mabel, where did she get that information? Because maybe we start to eat mint leaves and we don't get pregnant. And what's going on? Of course, I agree with that. Maru, how did you handle the social pressure, family, friends, the expectation because of the time that you spend looking to be a mother? For a moment, I felt like I should tell them. Then I started with my mom and my dad. They were the first ones who knew. I was lucky that they were not asking many questions. They were always expecting the information, waiting for the information. And I learned that I didn't want to talk about this. I made a video last year with an Argentinian actress where I was telling a lot of things about this. And sometimes silence can tell a lot of things that we cannot explain by words. And I would say, I'm telling you for you to know, hug me, but let's move on. Sometimes it's so simple to be straight that it can be difficult. But asking for silence was very important. It also happened with social media. At some point, I was doing sort of lives to tell everyone what's going on. And when I had the beta, everyone wanted to know the result. And the beta was negative, so I could barely handle myself, so I was not ready to handle others. So talk to whoever you want to talk and leave it clear that when there are news, I'm gonna tell you the news, but say exactly what you need. Maru, a message to the couples that are watching us in Voices of Hope. Well, wish you that it happens. Wish you that it doesn't take long. But you're not alone, and life has many things to offer. We need to pay attention for details. This quest cannot find us broken. It has to find us whole. And value what we have, because sometimes we don't see in all this search of the positive, we don't understand that we are looking for a son or a daughter, And in the meantime, a lot of things happen that are beautiful that sometimes we miss, because fences start to appear in this quest. The statistics are in favor of everyone, but sometimes we're more than a number. So carry on with hope, don't surrender, understand every single step. That's going to help a lot. Maru, thank you very much for showing how infertility can be a transformation path and a learning path. Thank you for your testimony, for your generosity, and being a reference for many in relation to what you can do. As you say, they're difficult, but there are some lights and there are learnings, and it leads us to transformation as human beings and as couples. Thank you so much for being here. I hope to see you soon. Thank you very much for the invitation. Big hug to Inset and you for your warmth. See you soon.